for 50 years
It's going
now.
to keep happening. The way they
And
wanna do
Pierre
it.
is not
Yeah.
going to turn that around.
You're live, brother.
He's got an
There you go.
agenda to follow.
All right, so
That's critical.
kill that for a second. Ready? All right, we're going to have a conversation that's live. And the idea is to have questions, answers, and try to basically cover a lot of subjects. So let's just begin that way.
And
So
was the camera on him?
it'll be on the people asking the question as well, if you wish.
Pretend it's not even there. Pretend it's not even
So
there.
you could ask, why is,
Just ask that question.
why
People are
should
asking.
people vote for you over Pierre?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Yeah.
He gave you
I-
the question.
Just
Like
ask
me,
him.
I'm not running for leader.
No, but
You asked that.
Yeah.
You asked me that question.
Yeah.
Why should people vote for me over Pierre, right?
Yeah.
And I explained just a few things where
Right.
I feel Pierre does not have the life experience. He doesn't, there's things, he understands the bills. He's been in Parliament for 18 years now? Got straight out of university and went right into Parliament. So that, following current legislation, Pierre definitely has a leg up on me, because I got sick and tired of watching the CBC, CTV, turned it all off because most of it is bullshit. So I'm not following that part of it. But what I feel Pierre doesn't get is, Canada's birth rate is 10 per thousand. In 1950, it was 27 per thousand. I grew up in a neighborhood where there were families with 10 kids. We had the smallest family with 4 kids. Today, couples are having 1, 2 kids. A big family's 3 kids now. So we're a dying country. And why are we a dying country? We're a dying country because our tax system, the tax rate that we have today, $12,000 federal basic personal exemption, isn't even close to the real poverty line. I calculate that the true poverty line in this country is $50,000. And depending on the province, BC would be higher, Ontario would be higher. And so what happens when you tax people when they're living below the true poverty line is you take away their ability to afford a healthy diet and lifestyle. So you drive them into the medical care system. You force both man and wife into the workforce. You put a lot of strain on marriages, which are driving divorce. Poverty is the mother of crime. When people can't make financial ends meet, you get mental health issues. So, and Pierre's not talking about reforming the tax system. I'm talking about reforming the tax system. And that's going to solve dozens of problems that we have in our country. If we increase the basic standard deduction to $50,000, allow income splitting for married couples up to $100,000, and have a deductible of $20,000 per child. Because I want our country to grow internally. Without a labor force, I'm a manufacturer, and I've had to go offshore to find people, to hire people. And we don't have a labor force anymore. We're a dying country. And it's our tax system that's killing our country. And the Conservatives, when they were in power over the last 50 years, they've done nothing to address it. I talked to Jim Flaherty, and I sent these letters to Jim Flaherty and Stephen Harper. Nothing was done about it. And Pierre is cut from the same cloth. They don't have the ideas. They don't understand what's destroying our country.
Right.
And as I said, I'm not against immigration, but I want controlled immigration. I don't want illegal immigration, and I want controlled immigration. Because we have to have people in our country, as we're bringing in immigrants, they have to share our value system. Because otherwise it'll destroy our country. And so that would be why me over Pierre. There's just a few things.
Yeah.
Sandy, would you like to ask a question of Joseph?
sure. This is a bit off topic for the politics side of it, but what moved you to go to Ottawa? What was your to go down to Ottawa?
Well, thanks for your question, Sandy. I had gotten involved I've been involved in the fight for freedom since the late 90s, when I fought for a kid that wanted to get his own form of medical treatment. And the medical care system tried to take him away from his parents, to amputate his leg against his free will. So I got involved in that. That was in 1998-99, and we won that fight. It became a public fight, and the parents got there. So I've been involved in freedom movement for really all my life I've been standing up for freedom and standing up against bad government. In January of 2019, when I could see that January, February, March, when they were lying about the therapeutics, that's when I got involved and formed Canadians for Truth, Freedom and Justice. A group of us co-founded this, and we pursued the truth and got the information out to Canadians on natural therapeutics to prevent and treat COVID-19. Because in our health food store that I owned, we had them right off the shelf. Anybody could go get them. And they suppressed that, they covered that up. So I spent 2 years working on that. So when the Freedom Convoy occurred, our videographer, professional videographer, we went and documented the whole thing. We interviewed truckers along the way, Chris Barber and others. We would interview them. And then when we got to Ottawa, the mission shifted. I could see we were getting all these truckers from everywhere across the country. And I mean, it was the most moving experience driving there for all of us, right? Seeing Canadians waving flags all the way. But when I got there, I could see that the organization was the number one priority.
Yeah.
So I started meeting with the leaders who I could discern to be the leaders of the truckers, and got to know them and started getting them together, working together to kind of create a steering committee, to help them create a steering committee to work together to keep the protest legal and peaceful.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got involved in.
Yeah.
But I shared their mission
Absolutely.
to end the mandates. I was 100%. It made no sense. For me, it felt like they were violating our God-given rights. And that's what the truckers were standing up against. And so I 100% supported their mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question over here
Oh,
from Vicky
thanks.
from Quebec.
So, hi, Joe.
Hey.
So, this morning we attended church with Arthur Pulowski. Was Easter today. Marked 1 year of him fighting and kicking out some cops that had raided his church. Why were you there this morning? Why did you go to Arthur's service this morning for Easter?
Well, first off, because you asked me. But I thank you for that, because it was the right thing to do, to go and support him. I was supporting all the pastors in Canadians for Truth, Freedom and Justice. 4 of our members are pastors. And so all the pastors, all the honest truth-seeking pastors in Canada have been standing up against the mandates as well, and the infringements on our ability to go to church, for example. And so Art Pulowski, more than any other pastor, took a leadership role in Canada on that. And so I was there to support him. I wanted to meet him and thank him, as I did before the service. I wanted to thank him for having the courage to do what he did and stand up for our rights and freedoms. So great, he's a great man.
Wow.
To do what he did,
He's 16 time in jail already.
16 times, eh? Wow, eh? Yeah. So that's why I wanted to let him know that I supported him 100%. Everybody that's been standing up for freedom, I'm supporting those people, because they're the patriots. We lose our country if we don't stand up. We're going to lose our country. Yeah, thanks.
We have another question over here.
We do we? Well, I'd probably ask you a question about ranching, farming. I'm in the cow-calf business. Feel like we got a lot of UN pressure leaking down to the governments and all these other organizations, to consumers, about beef being bad for the environment, and farming has a lot of the same pressures. What kind of climate policy would you have directed specifically towards ag, say?
Well, for one thing, I would say Canada, as far as our ag policy goes, like in terms of prior to the Trudeau years, we were already working on doing things to protect our environment with sane, rational government regulations. When Trudeau got into power, I could see that they have an agenda, and it's a UN agenda, and I don't share that agenda whatsoever. I would not want to be eating Bill Gates's burgers, however they're formulated, genetically modified whatevers. I'm not interested in eating that. I know it's bad for our health. I've studied natural health and healing for 30 years, and so the more natural it is and the less chemicals are used in the environment, the healthier our environment is going to be, the healthier people are going to be. So I'm for all forms of natural and certified organic and natural methods of growing food. I'm 100% against this new version of the future that they envision, this AI future. AI should be there to serve us, not the other way around. And these guys have a different agenda.
Yeah.
So as far as ranchers go, I'd be staying the hell out of your way is what I would say. Get out of your way.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Sane regulations. One thing I would say, I was involved in this in manufacturing. I'd like to see getting the cattle out of the lakes, rivers, and streams. And so I would be encouraging putting in policy. I'd like to see policy, and it doesn't have to necessarily become legislation. We understand that if cattle are in a dugout, right, it's not really good for the health of the animal or the health of the people that are going to be eating those animals. So clean water, clean environment is important.
Yeah.
If we don't preserve and protect our environment, the people that are environmentally sensitive and the conservatives, I feel, have made those mistakes in the past. If we ignore environmental issues, we drive those voters, and a lot of them are independents, we drive them to the Liberals and the NDP, who promise all these glorious things they're going to do, and because they're not business people, they don't do it, and they don't have a clue what they're talking about. So we've got to preserve and protect our natural environment for future generations as well. We don't want to be polluting our environment. But I think that's all fits in with natural, doing things naturally. Common sense. Yeah, common sense.
Another question over here by France.
What do you think about the carbon tax and the fertilizer prices, how high they are, and then the taxes that they want to put on the vehicles?
Well, I'm 100% against all of that. You could almost say whatever Justin Trudeau's for, I'm 100% against. So the carbon taxes, I've studied the issue a lot since beginning in 2005. I began to study the issue, and at one time, I thought that possibly carbon taxes, if they were universally implemented, but the more as time went on and I studied the issue, the problem really, and you have to get people to buy in. The problem isn't really carbon dioxide. The problem is pollution. And when you talk to conservatives, if you talk to conservatives about developing systems and technologies to reduce and eliminate pollution, my experience with talking to conservatives on that, you win them over. But when you talk about reducing carbon dioxide, and the UN scientists have had this singular focus on reducing CO2. But so take like a coal-fired power plant. What's coming out of that smokestack when it's not properly scrubbed and cleaned, there's a dozen different toxic substances. Right now, all over the world, because of coal-fired power, the fish is all contaminated with mercury. And I know a little bit about it because I recovered from mercury poisoning. It almost killed me, almost took me out. So for years I couldn't eat fish because I was so sensitive to mercury. And so our coal-fired power plants do need to be cleaned up, like as we have been doing, carbon capture technology, and or doing a great job of scrubbing. But the carbon taxes per se, I'm 100% against them because it doesn't solve that problem.
It doesn't, no.
And all it's doing is it's driving up home heating, natural gas, gasoline, diesel fuels. These are not luxuries. They're essentials for us to live. And to drive up the costs, it's just one more example of the Liberal NDP. They're clueless for one thing. They don't understand economics. And it just goes to show they don't give a hoot about Canadians. Because a lot of people, I'm getting calls now on child poverty in our province of Saskatchewan. And it's because people cannot afford. It's driving people into poverty. But Justin Trudeau doesn't give a shit about that. He doesn't give a hoot about that. And so, to me, the carbon taxes have to go because it's driving jobs out of our country and it's making food and everything so expensive that it's gonna bankrupt.
Well, yeah. Look, I got a bunch of guys that work in my shop, and they say their natural gas food bill and everything is doubled from last year to this year.
Yeah.
And you know, where's it gonna end? Like,
Yeah.
By the time you're said and done, you're gonna be paying them $50 an hour,
Yeah.
and you're not gonna get that out of your return because steel and everything else is up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, the carbon taxes have to go.
Have to go.
And I've heard Pierre is for that as well, and that's a good thing. But I
Yeah.
don't think Pierre understands why they have to go,
Yeah.
because Pierre's manufacturer company is not having to compete with China as we are competing with China.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing what's happening. Those jobs are going to China, where they're polluting at a 100 times faster rate than we are in Canada. So the carbon taxes are increasing global pollution,
Yeah.
not reducing it, because those jobs are going to countries that don't have the environmental standards for coal-generated electricity that we do. So, but Trudeau don't get that. So
Like I was talking to quite a few guys in the States, and they say those solar panels they're putting up there, they don't even pay for themselves in their lifetime. And then they got all that metal and waste laying there. Like that's like what do you think on that?
I've studied the solar issue. I had been involved in a company called Solar West because
Yeah.
we wanted to get, we bought into that company to help ranchers get the cattle out of the lakes, rivers, and streams. So that was putting in solar and wind powered pumps.
Remote drinking.
Yeah, to
systems,
get to be able to draw the water into tanks, getting them out of the, and so I was involved in that. And what's been happening on solar, I was at a conference in Ontario in 2009. A German solar expert was there, and they had predicted that solar costs would be become the cheapest form of energy, and I think we're on track for that. Solar has its place in the mix. The problem with solar is storage.
Yep.
Wind and solar, same thing. Storage is the issue, but they're making progress on those fronts. Like nature is diversity, and so I think we need various forms of energy. And so I'm not against solar power or wind power where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I have experience with wind power. I put up a windmill at my farm, and I saw all kinds of problems. With wind power, you want to keep it away from people's homes. Big wind turbines should be miles away from someone's home. There's health issues associated with large wind turbines. So you've got to be really careful with that. But solar has a big future. If solar prices come down to like 2-3 cents a kilowatt hour, what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to produce hydrogen with that. And you store hydrogen at 272 degrees, minus 272 degrees Celsius. But hydrogen can be combined with carbon. For example, there's a company called Carbon Engineering out of Squamish, BC. And what they're doing there is they got low-cost hydropower, and they're they're producing hydrogen, and then they're also sucking the CO2 out of the atmosphere, pelletizing it, combining it with hydrogen to produce a liquid fuel that looks just like this. And you can burn it in any combustion engine, and so there's zero pollution. So to me, through research and development, we've got to pursue multiple different avenues for power generation and continually develop the least polluting technologies that we can. Because again, for our kids in future, we don't want them to grow up in a socialist, communist, dictatorship country, but we also want them to have a future and environment that is clean and pristine so that they can be healthy. So it's not a... Yeah, we've got to think win-win, not win-lose like these guys are doing. They're thinking lose-lose really is where they're going. Yeah. So I don't know, does that answer?
Yeah. No, I was just kind of get your thinking of it.
Yeah. Solar's got a bright future.
Yeah, they do. Like when they first started, like it wasn't quite up to snuff.
Yeah, very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think they're doing a lot better because I know around our place they're putting up quite a few solar farms.
It's the least expensive. It's the most economical way to generate with the least amount of maintenance. Solar panels are really easy to maintain compared to wind turbines. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. We have another question here.
Hi. I guess I think everybody's here for a reason. I think we have a great country, one of the best in the world, with just the most amazing people in this country. A lot of things that are coming up on people that I talk to is about our sovereignty. I got involved when I heard Justin Trudeau mention that Canada will be the first post-nationalist country. And another one that caught my eye was when he said Canada has no core identity. Okay, so when that all comes into play to outside sources on how many of people I know are seeing how things are rolling with the UN and the World Economic Forum, that were topics that were supposed to be taboo and we're not allowed to talk to. And now we find out that that is a big issue and a backdrop. Can you talk to, I want your opinion on the United Nations and our sovereignty, and how would you fight for Canada?
Well, number one, I would say, elected leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister of the country, either one. I would, if the Conservative Party would not allow me to commit myself to 100% serving the Canadian people, you can't serve two masters. And so, like, to me, the United Nations, I believe, it's not a democracy, for one thing. I think the United Nations had its place. Mm-hmm. The way it's going right now, I feel it's corrupted, and so I've moved away from wanting Canada to be affiliated with the UN, other than having a voice there. I do not want the United Nations controlling the sovereignty of this country in any way, shape, or form, nor the World Health Organization, because I believe it is corrupted as well. I think the billionaires, and we know who they are, have done they've done a job. They've managed to capture, control, and corrupt a lot of our UN, World Health Organization. Listen to what Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger has to say about how the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has corrupted the World Health Organization, which is really an extension of the United Nations.
Yeah.
The World Economic Forum, that's just a club of billionaires, technocratic billionaires. And, I have nothing to do with them, have no interest in them. And if I were elected leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister of the country, they would have no control over me as a Prime Minister, nor would I be looking to serve them whatsoever. It's all, if you look at the platform that I have, it's all about helping the Canadian people. That's what I've done all my life. Help people in our area, in our province. I was awarded the Saskatchewan Order of Merit for that reason, for job creation and for improving the quality of life of the Saskatchewan people. And that's what I would be doing. What we've done in our community to end poverty, crime, I would want to do that for the country. And I believe I have the policies, in particular the tax policy, that I'd like to talk about. I think that would bring an end to poverty, sickness and disease and crime in this country. We can solve our problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question here?
I don't have a narrow down one, but I'm a teacher and I am not overly thrilled with the way education's going. Do you have any ideas of how to improve education?
Well, education, as we know, belongs in the provinces. It's controlled by the provinces. The federal government does not have a lot to say in education. As far as I'm aware, the federal government doesn't have a lot to do in education, although there are laws right now, there are woke laws being passed by the Trudeau government that are dramatically affecting the education systems, like Bill C-4, for example, which I'm 100% against. I feel that the first teachers are the parents, and so I feel the parents should have rights over their children, including their health decisions, and how their children should be educated. I would encourage parents to get involved in their school systems, get on their school boards to make sure that the content of what their children are being educated, what's the textbooks being used and what's being taught to kids. I think I would encourage parents to get heavily involved in that. But any federal legislation that is impinging on parents' rights to be able to, for sex education and that sort of thing, which Bill C-4 interferes with, which would make parents criminal for counseling children on sexual matters, That has to go. Any of that legislation that's been passed by the Liberal NDP coalition, that would be gone tomorrow if I were Prime Minister.
Now we have a question over here on
Healthcare.
healthcare.
Hey, Joseph.
One of my favorite topics.
And that's what I love about you. You're very in tune and up to date on the healthcare of Canadians and what's really, affecting Canadians, the good, the bad, the ugly. And obviously, we have had an extreme overreach of our Canadian medical system into the lives of our children and our families, and we've seen the destruction. Everything from the coercion, the vaccine mandates, the crimes against humanity, the genocide that's happening. So, if you were put into that position of leadership, how can we improve the health of Canadians?
Yeah, and that's a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
So, as you know, Svetlana, I recovered from a life-threatening illness. I spent 8 years from 1984 to 1992 in the conventional medical care system at the best medical care centers in North America, 3 times to the Mayo Clinic over 5 years. And when you go to the Mayo Clinic, they put you through 3 days of testing every time. And over that 8-year period, they could not give me a single clue as to what was causing my health problems. So I grew up in research and development, problem solving, both in management and leadership and in developing new products. So by 1992, I developed chronic fatigue in 84, and my health continued to deteriorate. Severe chronic headaches in February of 90, and with that, severe chronic depression. I was in and out of hospital for 2 years. And when I realized they could not give me any answers, I began to apply my research and development skills, and within 6 months, I figured out I had mercury poisoning from my amalgam dental fillings. I found the world's leading researcher, Dr. Hal Huggins, and in Colorado Springs, and he safely removed and replaced all of my amalgams, and I began to regain my health immediately. But I was so sick at the time, I knew I had to study natural health and healing is the field that I ended up going into to understand physiological, emotional, mental, spiritual, and environmental health. And so I became knowledgeable. I've studied that for 30 years. I regained excellent health as a result of that. So I have a good understanding of the difference between true health care, which is our own diet and lifestyle choices, and medical care. And I have all the respect in the world for the medical care system. Doctors and nurses have an essential role to play, especially when it comes to like trauma care and that sort of thing. But the cause of all disease, you could say, is toxicity and nutritional deficiencies. And so in 92, my family and I began eating 100% organic food diet, and I saw how our children's health just dramatically improved. Colds and flus were a thing of the past, and so in 95 we opened a health food store and helped people recover from all kinds of things. So that's where I saw the difference between true health care and medical care. And we talk about health care confusing the two, and that does a real disservice to Canadians, because if people understood the difference between true health care, their own diet and lifestyle choices, and medical care, what we would do is we would create the tax system that I propose. We would increase the basic deduction to the true poverty line so every Canadian could afford a healthy diet and lifestyle, and so they can make financial ends meet, so they can afford all the basic necessities, so they have mental health and physiological health. And so to me, the tax system is at the heart of what's driving our medical care costs through the roof. And the only way we're going to fix that is with creating a true healthcare system, a true tax system. We don't tax a business before it's profitable. So why the heck are we taxing our citizens before they're profitable?
Yeah, Joseph, I appreciate you saying that, because you know what determines our health? The number one social determinant of health is income.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have more household income, you're healthier.
Exactly.
Right?
And the statistics show that. As people's incomes rise, so does their health improve. And so anybody that would ask, okay, so where's the money going to come from to raise the basic deduction to $50,000 for every Canadian, allow income splitting for married couples up to $100,000, allow a deduction of $20,000 per child? Where's What's going to make up for that tax income? And what I say, the answer is it's where the money is right now. It's in the medical care system. And so we got to put the horse back in front of the cart and financially empower Canadians to afford a healthy diet and lifestyle. And I believe that's the way we'll solve many problems if we do that.
I agree. Thank you.
We have a question on the defense industry and Canada's ability to defend itself.
Well, for years we've been investing in the about 1.25% to 1.5% of our GDP on our military, and we're underfunding our military. If we're going to remain a sovereign country, the only reason we're getting away with it is because we're riding on the coattails of the United States. You know, the United States is our umbrella, our defense umbrella. But it's pathetic because as a NATO member, we're supposed to be spending 2% of our gross national product, which would be approximately 50 billion, 45 to 50 billion a year. And we're about at half that. We're close to half that. So I want our country to remain a sovereign country. And so I feel having a well-funded military is essential. I also feel I'm talking to military guys, and there's been a lot of corruption going on in the military. And I feel that we've, you know, like any organization in the country, we have to get honest, truth-seeking, principled people, leaders, real leaders that know how to solve problems, people who have accomplished something in their life, in charge of these heads of important organizations like our Canadian military. We have to rebuild our military to make sure it's functioning at every level with really good people in the leadership of our military. I want to defend our country, and I want us to do our part as a NATO ally. So that's how I would be increasing funding to the military.
We have one more question on gun rights and property rights and how they are connected.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I'm a gun owner. I have a restricted and both a non-restricted and restricted license. I grew up with guns. And I absolutely believe that property rights, Canadians have a right to own guns, and it should be a right to own a gun, not a privilege. As long as you pass the mental health test and gun safety, it should be your right to own a firearm. And it should not be government controlled at all, because again, right now in this country, the organizations that I least trust is our federal government. Do you think I want to give them my gun? Do you think any gun owners want to give their guns up under the current dictatorial government we have in this country? No, thank you. So I'm 100% for property rights, gun owners, and Canadians having their guns. I mean, the number one reason why Canadians own guns, of course, is hunting and sporting and you know, sport shooting, target shooting, and that sort of thing. And it's a great sport. It's a $12+ billion industry in the country, and it employs over 30,000 people. A lot of these are small businesses, and here we are hassling them. So, you know, I'm for in the wild, for example. I'm 100% for wild gun carry, firearm carry. You know, if a grizzly's coming after you, if you're not going to have time to go back to your vehicle and get your gun. So to me, anybody that's in the wild, whether it's hunters, fishermen, you know, tree planters, whoever's out in the wild, you should be able to carry a gun to protect yourself. I have no problems with that. So I'm 100% in favor of that. And I'm 100% in favor of property rights for gun owners.
One more question before we open it up again. It's on the Paris Accord. We're in the heart of oil and gas country in Alberta, in the capital of that, Calgary. And so the question is, what is your policy review on the Paris Accord as it relates to environmental stewardship?
Well, I'm 100% in favor of Canada having control over our own sovereignty. And so I don't want to be part of any agreements that are going to shut down our oil and gas industry and drive our prices up. We're seeing the result of being in the Paris Accord right now. And I'm 100% opposed to that. So I have to say my answer to the Paris Agreement or Paris Accord, I would opt out of it, just like Donald Trump did in the United States. I would want to opt out of it. That doesn't mean that we're going to opt out of preserving and protecting our natural environment, but we're going to do it in a common sense, rational and logical way. We're going to develop, as we have been doing, the oil and gas industry. My son-in-law has been in that for 14 years, and he's explained to me all the effort that has been going on in the oil and gas industry to clean up as much as possible. And so I think we're already one of the cleaner producing oil and gas countries in the world. And so I don't want international organizations controlling our oil and gas industry. We see the results. Inflation is going through the roof. Fertilizer prices are going through the roof. And so for that reason, I would want to get out of the Paris Accord. But that does, again, I reinforce, we would be developing technologies in-house and buying international technologies where it's appropriate to continue to clean up our environment. Our health is linked to the environment, so it's critical that we continue to develop the technologies to continually improve and clean up our natural environment as well. But I don't believe we have to bankrupt the country as we're doing right now in order to keep our environment clean, you know.
So before we close out on why you're the most qualified person to run Canada as the future Prime Minister, is there anyone in the room that would like to ask an additional question?
I would. So there has been a lot of, I think we see more and more the media. I mean, we've been on Ottawa for most of us. We've seen how they like and how they deform reality and how they're just liberals' lackeys for that matter. How do you think that we can fight back the media propagandists right now? I mean, there's a clear problem. So how can we solve this problem with the medias? And how can we, do you have a plan for accountability? Because, I mean, at a certain level, there's duty to uphold the truth. At least, how could I say that in English with me being French? Investigate, find out the truth, and expose power, right? Powerful people, that's their job. Keep these things, exposed. So how do you think we can, for my part in the East, I'm from Quebec, so everything that's been said in the Eastern media is absolute bullshit. So what do you think about that? What's going to be done with the media under your, not regime, because that's not the right word I'm trying to look for, but under your
under my
leadership. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, under my leadership and administration. Well, I think for years the Conservatives have tolerated the CBC, but to me, I feel that the CBC is going to push the agenda of whichever politicians are going to fund them the most. There's a total conflict of interest with the CBC being government owned. So to me, what I would want to do is privatize the CBC. You guys are already the owners of the CBC, so I would like to see every Canadian be given, I would privatize, I'd like to see the CBC privatized as a corporation, a privately held corporation owned by the Canadian people. So you would have, every Canadian would get a Class A share in the CBC, and then as Canadians, you would elect the board of directors that would hire the management team that would run the CBC. To me, the idea of just defunding the CBC, as Pierre's talked about, that doesn't make any sense to me. What does that mean? You're going to mothball it? You got billions of dollars in assets sitting there? We need to have independent news media. So I'm cool with. I would want to see the CBC assets held by the Canadian people with a vision, mission, core values, and principles statement set up for the CBC. And really, it's the only role of journalism is to pursue the truth, to gather the facts in an honest, impartial way. That should be the CBC's mission and every other news media. And so we have to cut off the funding from any government funding to any news media so that it becomes honest, truth-seeking reporting. But there's another problem with the news media. The other force that's controlling the news media is corporations. And we're going to have to address that as well. And so I think there should be a rule where no news media should receive more than a certain percentage, 5 or 10% at the max, 10% of its funding could come from any corporation or corporate group. because they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. And so we have to structure our media in Canada such that there's regulations there so that corporations and government do not control the media. Journalism is about the pursuit of truth, and so there's a lot of work to be done in that area so that the journalists could be released to do their job, which is to pursue the truth, to share the facts with Canadians so Canadians can make informed decisions based on the facts. We have a lot of work to do on that front, I can tell you that. There was another part to your question. It had to do with criminal investigation, and I think that what happened with the COVID-19 situation, especially with the suppression of therapeutics, I feel that we have to set up a commission of honest, truth-seeking scientists and doctors and lawyers and Canadians so that there would be a commission set up to charge to investigate, to pursue the truth in an impartial way, not a witch hunt, but an honest pursuit of truth to see why were therapeutics, who is covering up the therapeutics, and because doctors were not allowed to do their job. Dr. Peter McCullough has said that if doctors had been allowed to prescribe therapeutics, 85% of the people that died with or from COVID, those lives would have been saved. So to me, there's crimes against humanity, and I think everybody in this room has an idea of who may have been behind it because we've been in pursuit of truth, but an investigation has to be done professionally with qualified investigators to determine who was pulling the strings behind the scenes to prevent the CBC, CTV, Global from reporting about therapeutics. Who was pulling the strings behind the scenes?
And I have another question to ask to this. We've heard that Rebel News couldn't get a license of journalists now issued by the government. I'm not sure I'm giving the right terms when I'm saying this, but basically they were not recognized as media because somebody that has made research on them said that their content was less than 1% news, which we all know is absolutely untrue. What is your stand? Like these alternative media has been censored again and again. It's being destroyed. Help with big techs like YouTube and whatnot. How do you feel about this right now? Like these current events are happening in Canada in 2022. What are we going like? This is freedom of press. This is part of our constitution. So, what do you think about that?
Well, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms includes freedom of speech, and so to me, I don't have any problems. I have no interest, and I don't think the government should have any interest in regulating people who are pursuing truth and reporting it, whether it's Rebel News or any Canadian that wants to go out there and do reporting. Canadians for Truth, the organization I was a part of, we're out on Facebook reporting and we're publishing information, fact-based information, circulating that to Canadians to save lives. I assisted 29 people to have a speedy full recovery from COVID-19 just by sharing information with them, fact-based information. So should I have to be licensed to do that? I think that's crazy that the government would be regulating anybody for that matter, because under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, all Canadians have freedom of speech, and so that covers off Rebel News. I don't feel they should have to have a license. The only people we should go after is people who are lying, and that's our government right now. Our federal government is lying to people, and the news media is lying to people. So whoever's lying, there should be, that's perjury. If you're out there lying, misleading people, I should think there should be charges. If you are lying to people, intentionally lying to people, I think that there should be an investigation done, and if it's proven that you're lying, you should be charged with that. I'm not sure what the criminal charge for lying would be, but it could be even a civil suit for lying.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll close this on the following question: is why, Joseph Bourgault, are you the most qualified person to be the Prime Minister of Canada?
Well, there may be people more qualified than me, but I don't see them in the race right now. And that's why I stepped up, is because I'm an honest, truth-seeking person. I'm principled. I've been involved in leadership all my adult life. And so I've seen how to build unity in organizations by always being honest. Trust is built when you're honest. There's a lack of trust in our governments right now for good reasons, because we have lying politicians right now. and in particular in the Liberal NDP. I've been encouraged by the Conservatives, and that's why I chose to run with the Conservatives. I think they have the right principles. But as far as in the field of the Conservative leaders, I feel that I have more life experience, more leadership skill, especially executive leadership skill. I've recovered from a life-threatening illness. I have expertise in understanding true health care, natural health and healing, and medical care. Over the past 25 years, I've developed a tax system, and I've spoken with thousands of Canadians about the tax system, about raising the basic exemption to the true poverty line. And I think that that's the way that we can win over the majority of Canadians to vote for the Conservative Party, is if we start taking care of Canadians, looking after Canadians, not the globalists, looking after the Canadian people, serving the Canadian people. And that's what I've done all my life. I've been there to serve our farm customers, and I would be here to serve the Canadian people. I believe I have the leadership skills, the moral character. I have the competency skills, having run and grown large businesses. We've kind of created our heaven on earth in St. Brew. And so I feel I want to do the rest for the country. And so these are some of the assets that I bring to the table that I don't feel any other candidate could bring to the table.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for this really lively and relevant conversation. Thank you, Joseph,
Thank
for participating in this.